the New Orleans Pelicans. Obviously, we are Pels fans in this household, and we're going to kind of give a recap of the season. Unfortunately, Rebo Hustle and I were in the building last night to see the final game of this team and what we expect to be the final game with some of these guys on the roster. The New Orleans Pelicans, the Skeletons, as they were known this season, regular season go 49-33, one game away from the 50-win mark, but yet that only got us to the play-in tournament. We went 1-1, but the last game's the one you need to win. They secure the 8 seed, but that wasn't even enough to get one win as we get swept by the number 1 seed, Oklahoma City Thunder.
Yeah, I mean, it really sucks looking at the Eastern and the Western Conference, knowing how good the Western Conference is. And we talked about this in the car on the way back from the game last night. Is it possible for the NBA to ever turn to just a 16-seed playoffs? Is it possible that the number 8 seed Pelicans has the same record as the 3 seed Knicks? It really hurts knowing that that's the case. But that is how basketball is played. You play in your conference, you get swept by the 1 seed Thunder, who played immaculate defense this series. They found a way to disrupt the New Orleans offense as much as possible, causing turnovers, just getting guys out of rhythm. Lou Dort played like an absolute unit, was the real linebacker of that defense. I mean, he locked up B.I. I don't think B.I. had more than 15 points in any game this series. So that leads into the questions for the offseason. Are we trading B.I.? Do we keep him? Do you think that they need more time, which by David Griffin's interviews today, after exit meetings and everything, it seems like a lot of things are going to change in this lineup.
Yeah, David Griffin said, every offseason we said give it more time, give it more health, and we got it this year and we saw what happened, so something has to change, which is big words from David Griffin considering he's always been somebody who has kind of resisted change and just wanted to stick with his guys, and we've given it time. We've given it 3 years with our big three, and it just hasn't worked out. So like you said, what do we do with Brandon Ingram? I love Brandon Ingram as a player. I think he's one of the more underrated players in the league because when he's on, there's no stopping him. I mean, you can put 6 hands in his face, and he's going to make that midi over you. I mean, he is that good. But the problem is his fit into the offense, and, you really have to pay attention to those kinds of things, especially when you consider C.J. McCollum, Zion Williamson, Herb, Trey off the bench. I mean, you really have to find your spot on this team, and we don't know where Brandon Ingram lies. I mean, this is the offseason to make that decision. Either you trade him before the season or you give him an extension. There's no in-between.
Yeah, and of course there's the big question at center. Jonas' contract is up, so you're kind of just dead in the water seeing how much money he's getting offered because you can't really offer him that much. You're kind of crossing your fingers. If Jonas is the guy you want, you're kind of crossing your fingers and sitting there thinking about hopefully nobody offers him a big bag and we can get him on a steal price.
At the center position, I mean, it's hard to imagine this team without JV. He's been so darn good for us. He has played. If there's anybody who's been consistent and anybody who we could count on night in and night out, it's Jonas Valanciunas. I mean, I think over his 2 seasons here, he missed maybe 8 games. Like, he was a consistent piece of this, not only offense, but he really improved on the defensive side, going from somebody who would just kind of sit at the rim to being somebody who could be valued as a rim protector. So, obviously, I think big props to JV for what he did in New Orleans, and that's going to get overlooked from a lot of people, but it shouldn't, because I think he was one of the most mainstay parts of getting us to where we've been. And those 2 questions combined really get us to how many players do we retain from this squad. I know another contributor at the No Network, which, of course, we want you to check out everything they do over there. Pels Press, a fantastic Pelicans reporter. He does a podcast. He does write-ups. He's really active on X, so make sure to give him a follow at the Pels Press. He put the over-under line at 5.5 of the players that leave this team from who we have this season. So, do we retain most of the team, or do we get rid of more than 5 players that we have currently on the roster? That's kind of where he set it at, and I think that's a good number because you look at guys like BI, CJ, JV could all get moved, and then, if you're really making trades, you're going to have to throw in guys like Larry or Dyson or, even consider Jose. So there's definitely a lot of players in this team who we could see get moved this offseason, and that all starts at the top with our big three.
I mean, as the record shows, this is one of the most successful Pelicans teams we've seen, yet they still couldn't get it done in the postseason. And it sucks because this wasn't a postseason that most fans are going into saying, "Oh, we have a chance." A lot of people felt like we didn't belong there, especially after the second game against the Thunder. First game could have went either way. And it was a big momentum loss whenever we didn't come out on top, and I think that affected the rest of that series. But as far as players we might see leave or return, I could definitely see us losing Jonas, losing CJ, and mainly losing Zion. I think that the time is up with him. We've seen him be a huge, health risk to start his career coming into this season where he was, for the most part, very healthy. But to me, it comes down to his size and, all of his ability with the team. And he really didn't seem to fit and mold to me like some of the other players on this team has. I know watching him play, it's like he defies the laws of physics. He just runs as fast as he can at the hoop, throws it up, and it magically goes in. But I think that we could get a nice package in return for him. That's why I see us moving him.
Yeah,
Well,
I politely disagree.
I was about to say, as the logo shows on the left-hand side, we do promise hot takes. And if there ever was a hot take about this Pelicans team, I think it was just stated by our friendly Mustang.
Yeah, I mean, I get it. That's definitely the highest value trade asset that you have. But I really feel like David Griffin's coded speeches lately have leaned towards his love for Zion. We saw the most healthy season out of him so far. He played 65 games. Unfortunately, pulled his hamstring against the Lakers in the play-in. But he was by far the best player on this team, was the leader of the offense. And just the gravity that Zion applies to the offense opens up so many doors for everybody else, and that's what was lacking in this Thunder series. And I really feel like one of CJ or BI, probably BI just because of his value. He's young, longer guy, plays better defense. One of those two guys, just because they're both ISO ball handlers, they're both midi to three-pointer occasionally kind of guy. I feel like one of those guys has to go.
Yeah, and while this was CJ's best season he's had in a Pelicans uniform, without a doubt, not only from a scoring perspective, but a efficiency and leadership perspective, I think this was his best season. For me, that would be the guy we move just because I think he fits the team the least. For me, I think what we really need on this Pelicans team is a true facilitating point guard. We don't need a guy who's going to go out there and get you 19, 20 points a game. If you can get us 12, but facilitate an offense and get us moving and really pass the ball around to have an offense that flows rather than a three-man game with two in the corner or an ISO for 14 seconds and then trying to dip, which we've seen a lot of out of the Pelicans. I think that's the move for me. I love Brandon Ingram and don't want to say anything about trading him because I think he's a really good player, and when he's on, he's on. I think him and Zion can definitely coexist. It's just about communication is what BI said today, and I think that's true. If those two can communicate and figure out each other's styles and learn to work together, I think if we have a true facilitating point guard and, match that with maybe a stretch big who can also defend the rim, I think the Pelicans can make some moves to, really become a contender in the West. Getting near 50 wins and getting at the 8 seed, I think speaks less to this team, speaks more to the competitiveness and the parity of the NBA at the moment. So I think it's, for us, it's about what's going to make us better and what's going to push us in not only to the second round of the playoffs, but the conference finals and eventually become a contender for an NBA title.
Yeah, I feel like this is one of the top 5 best regular season records from this franchise, period. And unfortunately, just because of how good the West was this year, we got stuck in a play-in situation. Lost the first game, therefore, after winning the second game, became the 8 seed. But again, back to David Griffin's coded messages. A lot of things are going to change this offseason. At least one or two of your starters are going to move. And Najee Marshall's in a contract year. Don't really necessarily have the money tied to give to him just because it's all tied up in Zion Supermax and BI Supermax, and CJ's making more money than both of them.
Yeah, with this Pels team, it's not a question of if, but when something changes.